Between 1966 and 1987, a maximum security prison in West Germany held a single prisoner. It was Rudolf Hess, who had been one of the most powerful and influential men in the Third Reich. At the end of World War II, he was tried in Nuremberg and sentenced to life imprisonment. His destination was Spandau Prison, which was under Allied control. There, Hess spent the last 40 years of his life in almost total solitude, since for a long time he did not allow anyone to visit him, not even his wife or his son. The Nazi leader was watched by more than 600 soldiers of different nationalities, and nothing indicated that he could escape. However, on August 17, 1987, something unexpected happened. Somehow, the 93-year-old Hess managed to evade his captors and made his way to a cabin near the compound. When the guards found out, they immediately went looking for him. It was then when, opening the door of the house, they found something chilling. Today, in this new episode of Military History, we'll tell you everything about the strange death of Rudolf Hess. Are you ready? Let's start. To understand how Hess ended up in Spandau Prison, we first have to understand his background in the National Socialist movement. Rudolf Hess was born in 1894 into an upper-class German family residing in Egypt. When World War I broke out, he enlisted to serve in the German artillery, taking part in major battles such as Somme, Ypres, and Verdun. The officers praised his bravery in combat and awarded him the Iron Cross for his good performance. He was wounded numerous times, but the most serious was in 1917, when a bullet pierced his chest, nearly shattering his spine and killing him. This, however, did not take away his desire to fight, quite the contrary. After recovering, he began his pilot training to join the Air Force. Although he did not get involved in any aerial battle, he acquired valuable knowledge that he would put into practice years later at another key moment in his life. When World War I ended, Rudolf Hess enrolled at the University of Munich to study economics and history. In 1920 he heard a speech by Hitler for the first time, and was completely fascinated by his words. In fact, Hess was one of the first members of the Nazi Party, and helped the future Führer in his attempt to carry out a coup in Bavaria. Although this ended in failure, Hess never parted ways with his leader, almost becoming his shadow. On one occasion, a group of enemies of Nazism planted a bomb at an event with the aim of assassinating Hitler. Hess protected him from the explosion, suffering injuries in the process, but saving him from death. During the following years he continued to gain ground within the National Socialist movement. Once the Führer took control of Germany, Hess was appointed personal secretary to the dictator. Later, he obtained the position of minister without portfolio, with influence in the areas of health, economy, education, and foreign relations. Among other things, he was responsible for passing discriminatory laws against Jews, which marginalized them from the rest of German society. Hess was deeply anti-Semitic, and his devotion to Hitler was due, in part, to their shared belief that the Jews were responsible for all of Germany's problems. Around 1940, when the Third Reich was already fighting in World War II, Rudolf Hess began to worry about Hitler's plans to invade the Soviet Union. He considered that Operation Barbarossa was a huge strategic mistake, since Germany would have to fight on two battlefronts at the same time, and its chances of defeat would increase considerably. It was then that he devised a risky plan, which consisted of negotiating on his own with Great Britain. His goal was to make peace with the English government. For Hess, this was the only way for the Nazi Empire to survive the war, as he believed that England was the most powerful enemy. According to the information that Hess had, the British King George VI would accept the peace proposal, and would fire his Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, as soon as it was offered. The secretary planned to visit the Duke of Hamilton, an English nobleman, to put him in touch with the king. In this way, Hess took advantage of the skills he had acquired during his training as a pilot, and embarked on a long flight to England, without any other companions. However, Hess's information turned out to be wrong. As soon as he landed, the British authorities arrested him and never considered signing a ceasefire. Although the Duke of Hamilton contacted Churchill, as the secretary had hoped, both the Prime Minister and the King had firm intentions to continue the war. His plan, therefore, was a failure. Hitler himself, when he found out what had happened, flew into a rage, stripped Hess of all his posts, and ordered that if he ever returned to Germany, he would be executed. The former secretary of the Führer fell into disgrace, and he remained in England as a prisoner until the end of the war. During the Nuremberg trials, when the sentences for the leaders of the Third Reich were pronounced in 1946, Hess was sentenced to life in prison in Spandau. This was a maximum security prison with a capacity of 700 inmates, although it was only occupied by a few Nazi officers. By 1966, all had been released or died behind bars, so Hess became the only inmate in the facility. Until 1969, he did not allow his family to visit him, and he only changed his mind when his physical and mental health worsened. He complained that he couldn't sleep because of stomach pains, claimed that he suffered from amnesia, and said that his enemies were trying to poison his food. His lawyers asked for his parole, but the Allies always refused. For his part, the former secretary never regretted his role in Nazism and always stood firm in his anti-Semitic beliefs. On August 17, 1987, Rudolf Hess was 93 years old and, despite his advanced age, he was watched by more than 600 soldiers. However, that day, he somehow managed to evade his custodians and made his way to a cabin near the prison. When the guards found him, it was already late. He had used a lamp cord to kill himself by hanging from a window latch. In his pocket was a handwritten note, in which he thanked his family for taking care of him. Immediately his death was considered strange and suspicious, as many questions were left unanswered. Nobody knew how an old man had been able to evade all of Spandau's security measures, especially considering that he was nearly blind and had difficulty moving one leg. On the other hand, his hands were affected by osteoarthritis, so it was remarkable that he could have tied the cable around his neck to hang himself, when he was not even able to use cutlery to eat. His lawyer was the first to claim that he had been murdered, and Hess's son supported him, arguing that British intelligence agents were responsible for his death. According to this theory, the reason was that the former secretary was planning to reveal information about war crimes committed by England in World War II. Although the autopsies concluded that he had committed suicide, the murder theory was never completely ruled out, and to this day there are still dozens of investigators interested in this mysterious case. After Hess's death, Spandau Prison was demolished to prevent it from becoming a gathering point for neo-Nazis. Do you think Hess really committed suicide, or was he murdered? Leave us your answer in the comment box below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about many more military events that left their mark on history. Thank you very much for joining us until the end. And stay tuned for our next video.